So I hadn't actually been intending to cover this one, but I think it's important. Often when I speak about accountability of the police, it's either in the context of the UK or sometimes the United States. And when we think about police, police states, we tend to think of totalitarian regimes, um, Eritrea, Uzbekistan, and so on. But there's a high profile case in Australia. I was familiar with this case. It's a few years old now, but this is the outcome, and it's a complete and utter disgrace. I would like to hear Australian perspectives on this one. I'm just going to read out the report from the Eye. It's not too long, and it's by Ewan O'Byrne Mulligan. Um, a former Australian police officer avoided a prison term when he was sentenced yesterday for killing a 95-year-old nursing home resident with a stun gun. Christian White was sentenced to 450 hours of community service and placed under the supervision of a corrections officer for 2 years for manslaughter. Prosecutors are called for a prison term in the killing of Claire Nowland, or Noland, it's Nowland, a great grandmother who suffered dementia, but the judge said such a punishment was disproportionate. A jury convicted White last year, and he was fired from the New South Wales Police in December. He had faced a potential maximum sentence of 25 years in prison for manslaughter. Staff called police to a nursing home in the town of Cooma on the 17th of May 2023 because Nyland was wandering through the building with a walker and holding a steak knife. Well, the striking thing about this is there's a huge difference between a potential high tariff of 25 years in prison and 450 hours of community service. I think that the judge is an utter disgrace. Another report named the judge. I just think that's delusional to say that this is less serious. Other reports said that White had apologised, but he has taken an elderly woman's life, a scared old woman who I can't believe was posing any real threat. She's probably confused, probably she had dementia. This is a travesty. 450 hours of community service for that. I think 25 years might have been excessive, but certainly he should have got a custodial sentence. And this says something about the Australian police. Um, it's astonishing. Um, Incidentally, Australian police have also come under controversy for pandering to the Chinese regime when they have cracked down hard on anti-Chinese demonstrators, yet turned a blind eye to Chinese nationalist students. Um, I'm thinking of Drew Pavlo, who's a prominent critic of Beijing, and he's been treated appallingly by the Australian police. This is a disgrace. I mean, what sort of thug tasers a 95-year-old woman? I remember reading about it at the time, and we're not talking about Texas here. This is Australia, so yeah, I'd like to hear Australian perspectives on this. I don't know if there could be some sort of review for undue leniency, but the judge is a total disgrace. How that judge believes this is an appropriate sentence for taking the life of a 95-year-old woman in such a brutal way is appalling. I just find it hard to believe that a group of police officers couldn't have restrained a 95-year-old woman in a more moderate way. If she's posing a threat, maybe she's confused, she's scared, maybe there was a threat there, but come on, she's 95 years old. To taser a 95-year-old woman is an act of thuggery, and I think White belongs in prison. It's a disgrace. I hope he never wears a uniform again. And his legacy is the officer who tasered a 95-year-old woman. But shame on the judge. And anyway, I'd like to hear Australian perspectives on this. Anyone in New South Wales? I imagine this is a very big story there. It really puts into question Australian police brutality. I'd like to hear your thoughts. I cannot think of any convincing reason why that was necessary. Even if she was maybe scared and flailing the knife around, she's 95 years old. I find it very hard to believe two young male officers couldn't restrain a 95-year-old woman in another way. I'm pretty convinced I could, frankly. It's astonishing. A taser on a 95-year-old woman. Um, Shocking.